All right, guys, thanks for joining. We have our last couple chapters that we're going to read today in our super fantastic Dark Days in the Deep Sea story with Jack and Annie. All right, I hope you guys are ready. Buckle up. Let's have some fun. Chapter 10, The Heart of the Ocean. Jack put the wand back in his pack. Then he and Annie charged out of the lab with Henry behind them. The three of them climbed back up the stairs. When they stepped onto the top deck, they heard the sailors still shouting and yelling. Jack and Annie raced across the deck. They pushed through the crowd until they got to the railing. The octopus was still in the net, bright red and hiding in fear. The sailors had gathered weapons. Some were aiming harpoons. Others stood by with knives. Some pointed paddles. "Stop!" cried Annie. "Stand back!" the captain yelled at her. "You must bring it up alive," begged the professor. "I beg you to let me examine it before you slay it, Captain." But before the captain could answer, someone hurled a harpoon at the creature. It missed and landed in the water with a splash. "No!" yelled Annie. "Listen to us!" Jack yelled at his loudest voice. "You have to hear the truth." He stood up on the bottom rung of the ship's railing so everyone could hear him. "Don't touch him," he shouted. "He's not going to hurt us. He deserves to live peacefully in the sea, a miracle of nature." But no one was listening to Jack. No one even turned to look at him. "Stop! Hear us," said Annie. "We speak the truth. Leave him alone." "Remove the children," the captain roared again. "Now!" Tommy and Joe grabbed Jack and Annie. "Let us go! We have to talk to them!" yelled Annie, kicking and flailing. She and Jack broke loose from the sailors. "She's right! They have to hear the truth!" yelled Jack, running towards the railing. "He's okay! Where is he?" "He's different from people, but he's a miracle!" Again, no one seemed to hear him. "The magic's not working," Annie cried to Jack. "I know," said Jack. He was desperate. No one was hearing the truth. What was wrong? He and Annie had followed the rules. They were trying to help others, not themselves. They had tried their hardest first. And Jack had used only 5 words. "Look!" a sailor shrieked. "Look at the monster!" Jack and Annie looked back in the water. The giant octopus had uncovered his head and raised it out of the water. The sound was breathy and whispery, as if it came from the wind. The members of the crew lowered their weapons and stepped back in awe. It speaked!" shouted a sailor. "Me!" The sound was wild and shrill, as if it came from a deep forest. "Goo!" The sound was hollow and haunted, as if from an ancient gong or a bell or a drum. "Home!" The sound was unbearably sad, as if it came from the heart of the ocean. "I'm no monster!" The octopus fell back into the water. All the seamen and scientists stared in wonder and terror. Then Annie's voice rang through the silence. "Did you hear him?" he said. "Let me go home! I'm no monster!" is what he said. The crew looked at each other in shock. That's what I heard," one man said. "Heard it with my own ears." "I heard it too," said another. "Me too." "It's a sign," said a sailor. "We can't hurt him." "Or any other like him," said another. All eyes turned to the captain.
Puppy.
He stood still for a moment, staring down at the octopus in the net. The captain looked at the professor. The professor seemed stunned. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The captain looked at Jack and Annie. "Please hear him," Annie said. "He told you the truth." The captain stared at the octopus for a long moment. Then he raised his hand. "Free him," he said. The sailors slowly put down their harpoons. "Sir, I request permission to cut the creature from the net," Henry said to his captain. The captain nodded. "Permission granted." "Mr. Moseley," said the captain. "Help me," Henry said to Jack and Annie. "Sure," said Jack. "We'll come too, mate," said Joe. Joe and Tommy hurried after Henry, Jack, and Annie in a row of small boats on the deck. The sailors lowered one boat at a time. to the surface of the water. Then Jack, Annie, Joe, Tommy, and Henry all climbed down the ladder and stepped inside. Everyone else watched from the deck. Joe and Tommy rowed alongside of the ship until they came to the spot where the giant octopus was trapped. The two sailors held the boat steady with their oars. "Grab the net," Henry said to Jack and Annie. Jack reached out and grabbed a corner of the net. Annie helped him pull it out of the water. Henry used a big knife to slice through the thick rope strands of the net. Even though the rowboat shocked back and forth, Jack didn't feel sick at all. Jack, Annie, and Henry pulled the torn net into the small boat. Jack kept staring at the octopus. He looked back at all of them with his great... Oh, isn't that awesome? All of those guys helping the octopus. The great eyes, his tentacles spread about him like a giant flower. His fierce red color had changed back to gray. "Goodbye, you," said Annie. "Goodbye now. Go home." The octopus lifted two of his tentacles as if to wave goodbye. Then he slipped under the surface of the water and vanished. Jack looked up. The captain, the professor, and the crew members were all gazing silently down at the water. Henry gave the captain a salute. The captain saluted back. Then everybody on board clapped and shouted with joy. Overhead, the clouds had disappeared, as if a curtain had been pulled away from the sky. Pink and red swirls of light streaked through the blue. The cheering died down. Let us disturb these waters no more," commanded the captain. "Unfurl the sails! Get the steam up in the boilers!" Henry turned to Jack and Annie. "While they prepare the ship, shall we return you to shore?" he asked. "Yes, please," said Annie. Jack just nodded. He was totally exhausted. As Joe and Tommy started rowing back towards land, the wind shifted and died down to just a little breeze. "I predict a fine, clear night tonight," said Tommy. "And tomorrow too," said Joe. "The wind should be brisk." "A good time to sail," said Tommy. When they drew close to shore, Tommy and Joe both jumped out of the boat. Splashing through the shallows, they pulled the boat up onto the beach. Jack and Annie hopped out. Henry climbed out after them. "Thanks," Jack said to the sailors. Henry walked with Annie and Jack up to the dunes. "Are you sure you'll be all right?" he asked. "What will you do when the night comes?" "Don't worry," said Jack. "We'll get back to our parents before dark." "Don't worry at all." "Lucky you," Henry said wistfully. "I wish I could be back to my family before dark, too." "I hope you keep having a good voyage," said Annie. "And I hope you learned a lot," said Jack. "Bye." Wait, before you go," said Henry. "I want to give you something." Henry reached into his pocket of his vest and took out a beautiful nautilus shell. "The real reason I ran into my lab when the storm came was to get this," he said. "I didn't want to risk losing it, but now I would like to give it to you." "Oh no, Henry, you love it. You keep it," said Annie. "I do love it," said Henry, "but I want you two to have it. Today you taught me, no one, not all, even all of us, we all learned an important lesson. It is a dark day in the deep sea when we cause innocent creatures to suffer. The professor said we can conquer our fears through knowledge, but you taught us that our fears can be best conquered through compassion and kindness. Even we scientists must never forget to have compassion and kindness for all creatures. My compassion for the little creature that once lived in this shell made me very happy." "Oh man," thought Jack, "that's the secret that we need to find." Henry held out his gleaming nautilus shell, and Annie took it from him. "Thank you, Henry," said Annie. "We promise to take very good care of it." "Thank you," said Henry. He brushed his hand across his eyes. "Well, I must say goodbye now. Enjoy the rest of your vacation." Henry saluted them. Before Jack and Annie could say anything, the scientist turned and walked briskly back to the rowboat. "Let's go," Annie said to Jack. Jack and Annie walked through the dunes, headed through the seagrass to the rope ladder. Then they climbed back into the treehouse and looked out the window. The rowboat was sailing over the shimmering water of the sunlit sea, heading back to the HMS Challenger. "Goodbye, mates," said Jack. "Our mission," said Annie, as if she'd just remembered. She looked at Jack. "We didn't discover a secret of happiness." "Yes, we did," said Jack, with a smile. "Henry said it, actually. A secret of happiness is having compassion for all living creatures." "Compassion," said Annie. "Yeah, that means feeling sympathy and love and kindness for them," said Jack. "Oh, sure," Annie said, matter-of-factly. "Loving other creatures makes me really happy. I wonder why some people don't get that." "I don't know," said Jack. "Too bad they have to see a miracle first, like an octopus talking," said Annie. "I know what you mean," said Jack. "The octopus just being an octopus is the real miracle." Annie smiled, and Henry's seashell, the little creature inside him too, she said. He was a miracle too. She held out the shining shell. Jack took the shell from her and carefully put it in his backpack. "The shell will help us remember the secret," she said. "I think we always knew it," said Annie. "Henry just put it into words for us. Come on, let's go." Annie picked up the Pennsylvania book and turned to the picture of the Frog Creek woods. "Lee me go home," she said, repeating the strange words she heard from the octopus. Jack smiled. He started to tell her to say it right, but before he could, the treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Soft raindrops patted against the roof of the treehouse. "I love being home," said Annie. "Me too," said Jack with a sigh. Jack and Annie strapped on their bike helmets and pulled on their sneakers. Then Jack took the research book out of his backpack and put it in their library books. "All I want to do now is to go to our warm, dry house and see Mom and Dad," said Annie. "Me too," said Jack, "and read one of my new library books." "And eat dinner," said Annie. "A good dinner," said Jack. "No stale biscuits or lime juice." He slipped on his backpack. "And no pea soup." "Pea soup?" asked Annie. But Jack had already started down the ladder, and then read a little more and climbed into bed. He continued. "A warm, dry bed, a warm, dry house," said Annie, following him. "Yep," said Jack, stepping onto the wet ground. "I guess the octopus just wanted to go home too. Hey, I wonder if he has a name." Said Annie. She and Jack climbed on their bikes. "I think his name might be Charles." "That sounds right," said Jack, laughing. "I wonder if Charles has an octopus family and octopus kids." "I bet he does," said Annie, "and I bet he couldn't wait to go home and hold them in his 8 long arms." Jack laughed. "Yeah, I bet you're right," he said. Then he and Annie took off riding back through Frog Creek woods. Rain fell harder, but it didn't matter. They were heading home. The end. All right, guys, I hope you guys liked that book. That was awesome. So, we will be starting our new adventures with the Magic Tree House on Monday, guys. So, for your last journal, I want you guys to think. Okay? I want you guys to think. How would your story end? I want you to draw a picture, draw an illustration, and maybe write a couple sentences and label that illustration about how your story would end. Okay? If you could write the story, how would yours end? All right, guys. Thanks so much. I hope you guys had a great time and listened and had fun and enjoyed it. All right, guys. Adios.